everyone, and welcome to We Go Back. I'm your host, Bryan Abou Chacra, and on this week's episode, we will be reviewing Yeon and Meet Kevin Johnson, the 7th and 8th episodes from Season 4 of Lost. I want to open up to the book that Regina is reading on the Kana. This is called The Survivors of the Chancellor, which was a novel written like a diary that chronicled the final voyage of a British ship called the Chancellor. Funny little fact, the book before it was called Mysterious Island, and I think that this is all a nod to the author, Jules Verne, considered to be the father of science fiction. Now this will take us into our first flash forward where we see that Sun has successfully gotten off the island. And a nice little detail that I wanted to point out to you folks, if you pay attention to what she's watching on the TV, it's the episode of Exposé where Nikki gets killed. We now know that Sun did get off the island and is one of the Oceanic Six, as she is immediately recognized as she's going into labor. And this sets up one of the greatest written episodes in the entire series where Jin and Sun are actually not in the same timeline as we're going through their off-island experiences. So one of the first clues that we actually get is the one I always tell you to look out for. If you look at the cell phone that Jin is holding, it's a giant cell phone from the year 2000. Now, this will take us to the conversation that Sun has with Daniel about what exactly their intentions are in coming to the island. And I think this scene is very important because you're seeing two characters in opposite ends of the spectrum. Sun is very comfortable lying, whereas when you see Daniel, he struggles to lie and almost just won't do it. He tries to always tell people exactly what's going on, even though it might harm him. And we see that happening when Charlotte stops him from revealing exactly what they're doing on the island. This takes us to our next interaction with Sun, where we see another character who doesn't like to lie in Juliet. Where Sun tends to lie, Juliet addresses things directly, and she always does it head on, even though in her case, it has come back to bite her in the ass. Now I want to address the scene in the flash forward where Sun asks for Jin during her labor. And I think that this detail is really well written into the show because it's a great way to make you think that she is truly asking for Jin and lead you down the path that he is actually with her and just running late because he's trying to find a gift. But in reality, what do they always tell you? That if somebody is panicking, don't tell them not to panic. The doctor understands that in this case, it's much better for him to play along with her to get her to calm down. Now let's go on to the next clue where Jin and Sun are shown to be existing in two different timelines. When the shop owner tells Jin that it's the year of the dragon, the only time that it could have possibly been for this to all make sense was the year 2000. Plus again, look at Jin's phone. Now I want to bring up the scene where Juliet spills the beans about Sun cheating on Jin, and I think this brings up one of the most underrated moments in the entire series of Lost. When Jin leaves to go fishing, Bernard joins him, and they get to have this very intimate talk about being the only married men on the island. And Bernard talks about karma. So for those of you who don't know it, Bernard explains it in this scene. And he talks about how if you're good, good things will come to you, and if you are bad, bad things will be brought to you. And it makes Jin understand something that really brings a very emotional end to this episode, when he finally goes back to Sun and tells her that he understands what she did wasn't to him. So now I want to go back to the Kana, where we see Saeed and Desmond finally get to meet with the captain, who explains to them that the entire crash was staged and that it was done by Ben so that nobody could find them. And as we've seen in everything that he's done, he's quite capable of doing exactly that. Let's jump into the main thing that I want you guys to take away from Jin and Sun's relationship. Everything is on the table. There are no more lies between them, and they finally can stop lying to each other, which produces one of the best and most beautiful moments in the show. When Jin asks if the baby is his, she finally can tell him the truth. This brings us into the end of the episode where it's revealed that Sun and Jin have been on two different timelines the entire episode. For those of you who might not understand why they would include Jin's part with all of this stuff in the year 2000, you have to remember that Lost is a mystery. And in that mystery, they have to give you a few misleading things to keep you along. And ultimately, this show is meant to give you entertainment. And it's really entertaining at the end when you suddenly reveal that they're on two different timelines and that realization dawns on all the viewers. That's a lot of fun. As a viewer, it's a great emotional roller coaster, and they tie that in so well, especially because you see at the very end, the big twist is that Jin is dead. And this will take us into Meet Kevin Johnson. I want to open up with the conversation that Miles has with both Sawyer and Locke, where he really sobers up their expectations of what Ben can do, pointing out that a week ago they had a gun pointed to his head and now he's living with them freely. We also see throughout this episode how far Ben is willing to go to make sure that his plans play out the way that he wants them to. For all of his faults, you can't say that Ben won't protect his daughter, and I think this shows you just how resourceful he is at making sure he gets what he wants. The first thing he does when he's left alone isn't try to escape, but to make sure that his daughter is safe. I really like the exchange that Alex has with Ben when she asks if they are more dangerous than he is. They are at least equally resourceful. I mean, they found the island and they're looking specifically for Ben, which means that they'd been trying to find him and hadn't been able to, and we'd been told by Ben in the past that once people leave the island, they can never come back. And we've seen in Miles' confirmation from their meeting that they do just want Ben and apparently are willing to kill everybody there to get to him. Now, this episode comes in and answers a big question that a lot of people had after season 2, which is what happened to Michael and Walt. Because I don't think we all expected to see him again, but we do get to find out what led him back to being at the island. So after Michael tries to kill himself, he goes to try to see Walt, but his mom won't let Michael see his son, and she says that he's given up his right to try to see him. This is absolutely tying back to what we have seen from Michael in the previous seasons. He gave up his right as Walt's father to let him go overseas. So we've seen it twice now. We've seen him give up his paternal right of Walt 2 different times. He doesn't fight enough for Walt, and we can see that Walt was very aware of this when they were on the island, that he felt that he wasn't wanted by his father. This causes Michael to go give up the watch that Jin had given to him out of camaraderie to go get an illegal gun. And right before Michael tries to kill himself, Tom, of all people, comes out and stops him. And he tells him that the island won't let him kill himself, which we really can't argue against right now, considering that he just survived a head-on collision with a shipping container. But we do find out the reason that Walt won't speak to him is because he told him what he did to get them rescued. Tom dares Michael to try to kill himself, and I think this is really funny because if you consider all of the times that Michael asked people to just shoot him, he's very eager to die, and we have heard him say that he came here so that he could die. So we see Mike literally pull the trigger and the gun jams and tries to go for it again, but right before he pulls the trigger a second time, they find that the oceanic remains have been found. Almost as if the island was reminding him that he couldn't be let go. Michael goes to see Tom, and we find out something about Tom that I think was great in the way that they presented it. We find in this scene that Tom is gay, and I love that they didn't make this a big pageant, they just included it as part of his character as if it were nothing. And I'm really bringing this up because in the entire series of Lost, if you look at all the characters and all of the time they've spent in showing you everybody and all of these different backgrounds, you actually see a lot of different cultures, a lot of different people, and a lot of different types of religion and beliefs. That's one of the things that made Lost such a successful show worldwide, is that it was something that everybody could relate to. You had Koreans, you had people from Africa, you had people who were in the Russian army, and then you had people from England, Scotland, Australia, all over the world. It really was a multinational cast, and the fact that they had that put in there made this show so relatable to so many different people. And now we're finding out that Tom is gay, which I'm bringing up only because this is a callback to the comment that he makes to Kate when he tells her that she's not his type. Lost was very diverse in very many ways, and I really appreciated that about this show. But now we find out from Tom that Widmore was actually the one who staged the crash, which is completely opposite to what the captain had said in the previous episode. Saeed and Desmond have both mentioned that the captain was surprisingly forthcoming and quite honest with them without being pressured, and we know Saeed can tell the difference between somebody lying and somebody not lying. And we know that Ben will lie to his people to get exactly what he wants. Ben is sending Michael to redeem himself for what he's done. Again, Ben is playing on what Michael is emotionally invested in to try to get him to do what he wants. So one more piece of evidence evidence that makes you consider whether or not Widmore's intentions in finding the island are good or bad is the conversation that Frank has with Michael on the deck, telling him that he believed that Frank knew that the plane in the bottom of the trench wasn't Oceanic Flight 815, which is also suggesting that there might be some history between Widmore and Ben. You could very easily conceive that Ben has created a lot of enemies over time. In this next scene, we see Ben tell Michael that he will not kill innocent people like Widmore will, which I don't think is true at all. When you look at what Ben has done so far, he's killed Goodwin, he's effectively killed Ethan, and then the two people in the Looking Glass station that he had Mikhail kill had nothing to do with anything, and he killed them just to solve his problem. Ben is absolutely willing to kill innocent people to get what he wants. But throughout this whole episode, what we learn is how deeply Ben develops his plans and how they fall into play. And we've seen him manipulate people throughout the entire series. We see him do that again to Michael in this episode. We also see that when Ben's plans don't go the way that he wants them to, innocent people do end up dying, as we see where Carl and Danielle end up getting killed by Widmore's men. Widmore may be just as dangerous as Ben. We now have another conflict between two characters in this show. We've had it between Jack and Locke, Jack and Sawyer, but now we're getting a conflict between Ben and Widmore. And this is definitely going to be a great setup into what's happening next in the series. As we know in our next episodes, The Shape of Things to Come and Something Nice Back Home. We'll be reviewing those episodes next week. Email me your thoughts, theories, questions, and anything you want to know about this show. WeGoBackPodcast@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter @KingLordBryan. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good day.